You're listening to Radio Kidnappers, the voice of Hawke's Bay. This is a program called
The Wonderful World of Wardini Books.
Yes, it is indeed. And it's our pleasure, as always, to have in the studio the wonderful Lou from Wardini Books in Havelock North. How you been going, all right?
Yeah.
Just telling me before we came to where you've been flat out like a lizard drinking.
Yeah, that is my favourite phrase of yours. It is true.
You haven't even seen daylight yesterday.
No,
you were inside.
I stayed inside for over 12 hours in one little spot.
How boring would that be?
It wasn't, because I was very busy all day, so I wasn't bored, that's for sure.
Anyway, here to talk about 3 more fabulous books that you have read and recommend, and the first one is called Contacts. Is that sort of like an aliens have come to Earth?
No, not that kind of contact. So it's a very modern use of the phrase because you have contacts in your phone.
Yes, you do.
So it refers to that.
Right. Yes.
So there's a kind of a few books at the moment that I've read where the main character has come to the end of their tether. Mm-hmm. And in this one, it's James, and he is at the end of his tether because his girlfriend left him, and he met her while he was at doing an exercise class designed to help him lose weight. And so all the weight he lost while he was with Michaela has now piled back on after she's gone, because he's very upset about it.
Stressed eating.
He worked for his best mate, Carl. They've been best mates for years, really close. His best mate sacked him. You find out why.
Does it get worse?
It gets worse. His sister, who's very close with his children, they've had a falling out, and she lives in Australia and he lives in London. So he's isolated, and you can see how this happens, and how someone that's had warm friendships and loving relationships and supportive family, that pops off one by, through a set of circumstances that can just evaporate. So James is all by himself, and he's very hopeless, and a few years before his father died, and they scattered his ashes off his favourite bridge in Edinburgh near the railway station. So James gets on the train from London to Edinburgh, and he's going to go and join his dad.
Oh, right, no.
So he sends a tender and well thought through message by text to the 158 contacts in his phone, saying, "I'm really sorry, it's none of your fault, I'm going to end my life today." And so he's on the train, and he's got his pork pies and his 6-pack of beer, and he's got the overnight train, and he feels relieved, and he's put his phone on flight mode so nobody can get at him. And so his narrative is just sort of, his brain can't stop picking through the things that have happened, so you find out his perspective of things that have happened to him. And you also go to Michaela, who now lives in Berlin with her new partner, and she gets the text and what that means for her, and how she has to pick through what happened with James. And Carl, his best mate who sacked him, just is frantic, and he's in his car on the motorway and trying to figure out where he's going, where James might be, because nobody knows where he is. The one that actually swings into action is Steffi, who is his flatmate. And they barely know each other. They're like ships that pass in the night. But she's received this text, and she's like, "Oh my God, I didn't do anything. I saw him crying at the table the other day, and I just patted him, and said, it'll be all right." And so she feels terrible. And but she's the one that has this kind of brain that goes, "Right, I'm going to find out where he is, and I'm going to set up a Facebook page, and I'm going to make sure that everybody's sharing it." And she's the one that swings into action. So there's all this happening, and it really is a race against the train, because when it gets to Edinburgh, the reader knows it's all over. Wow.
It sounds not like a very uplifting book
but
at all.
It
sounds depressing.
It's not at all, because Mark Watson, I've forgotten the author, forgot to tell you author. The author is Mark Watson, and he's a comedian, and it actually, as well as a novelist, and everything's told with a light tone. So even while you're getting these reminiscences, it's fun things that happened, but then there's that one little pivotal moment where things went wrong. Not necessarily from anybody's fault, it might be a miscommunication, but it's told with a really beautiful lightness of tone, and it is about making sure that your people are okay.
Yes, indeed.
And not losing that contact with people.
And is it like a 1950s movie where the cavalry come over the hill at the end, or is that a spoiler?
It would be a spoiler, but it does have a good ending.
When you mentioned it, I thought, geez, I've heard about that book before, but it must have been on your Facebook page, was it? I was reading about it.
Quite possibly.
Yes, it was, probably. Anyway, out of 10, what would you give that book?
As a 9 out of 10.
Oh, it's sort of almost a can't-put-down book.
Yeah, I couldn't put it down. I read it really quickly. It was a very easy book to read.
Oh, right. Yeah. So, Contacts. Now, the next one is called The One and Only Ivan.
Yeah, it's a children's book by Catherine Applegate, and I would say it's probably for about readers of 8 or 9 and over. My only caveat would be that, I'll tell you as we go along. So what it's about is Ivan is a gorilla, and he is a gorilla. It's told from his point of view. It's all in his voice. because gorillas can understand humans, they just can't communicate well
a bit
with
like
them.
the Far Side.
Yeah, because humans aren't looking. Yeah, that cat. So Ivan has lived in captivity since he was a very small baby gorilla. So his parents were murdered by poachers. He and his sister Tag were captured. We don't know what happened to Tag for a long time. And Ivan ends up being adopted by this guy, Mac, and his wife, and they sort of bring him up in the house and they have him as an attraction in their it's like a circus mall in America. So he's now a silverback gorilla, and people don't want to see him so much anymore.
He's not cute anymore.
He's not cute anymore. He's lived in this quite small domain, they call it, with a big glass window so everyone can stare at him. He's lived there for a very long time. And it's based on a real gorilla called Ivan, and he lived in captivity like that for 30 years.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's terrible. And in Mac's Mall as well, there is a grown elephant called Stella. And there is a dog called Bob, and he's actually not supposed to be there at all. He's a stray. But Ivan was once given a baseball bat for his birthday, and now there is a bit of a hole in the bottom of the glass in his domain, and he wasn't allowed to keep the baseball bat, but Bob gets in and out that way. And he sleeps on Ivan's belly at night because it's a comfy, warm place and they're lovely friends, so Stella and Bob and Ivan. And there's a little girl who's the janitor's daughter called Julia, and she's the one really that passes paper and crayons through to Ivan because he draws. He's an artist.
Yes, well.
So really you're getting their stories of how miserable it is for them. You know, they're kind of safe, but they're captured and they're not treated excessively nicely. They're not desperately abused. But Stella can remember being an elephant in the wild. She can remember her mother, and they need a new attraction because the circus is failing. And so Mac buys a baby elephant, and Stella is heartbroken because she can see this beautiful baby elephant, Ruby, who's just going to have this miserable life like she is, you know, made to sit on, you know, sit on a ball and have a little dog ride around on her back and, you know, for people's entertainment. So she makes Ivan promise that he's going to look after Ruby, and he has to hatch a plan. And he's seen on his TV, because he has a TV in his room, in his domain, that there's this beautiful place called a zoo where they look after animals a lot better than Mac does. So his plan is to get Ruby to the zoo.
Awesome.
It's amazing.
So far you've told me 2 depressing stories.
No, it's not though. Because where there's darkness, there's light and there's hope.
Right. And there's a moral in there, isn't there?
Yeah,
Yes,
because, you
indeed.
know, awful things happen, but some humans are good, some humans are bad. And,
Yes.
and it's like we've talked about this before, when you see it from an animal's perspective, something that's not human, it sheds light on what we're like and how we can be better.
Yes, indeed.
So they're very optimistic.
Are you going for the trifecta with the last book, which is called The Chilling Effect?
This is just a great deal of fun.
Oh, that's what we like, yeah.
This is a science fiction space drama opera comedy.
Oh, good. Sounds like me.
Yeah, good. You like that kind of
I
thing.
love that sort
And
of
this
stuff.
is by Valerie Valdez, and her hero is Captain Eva Innocente, and she has a ship. And I can't remember the name of the ship. There's a lot of Spanish phrases in it. It's really good. She curses in Spanish, old Eva Innocente. And so we're in the future, and humans and aliens compete for jobs in outer space. And Eva used to be on the wrong side of the law. She used to work for quite a dodgy bloke, and her dad is a really dodgy bloke too. But she's decided to go straight, and she's got her lovely ship, and she's got a beautiful crew, and they're doing all right, thank you very much. But the complication occurs when her sister is kidnapped by the Fridge, which is a terrible, terrible crime organisation. And they don't want a ransom, they want Eva, because they want Eva's services, because she's really, really good at what she does. And so they give her all these jobs that get more increasingly difficult in order for her to save her sister. And she's also, there's this quite funny scene where she's like, oh my God. So she goes for a couple of drinks in this bar on this planet that they've landed on. And there's a guy that comes in, it's a very adult novel, and he's the holy righteousness or something is how he describes himself. And he sits down next to Eva and he said, I want to engage your services, you know.
Yes,
nudge,
we know,
nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Say no more.
That kind of thing. And she just tells him to hop it. And so immediately he puts like a price on her head, and she has to run off and, you know, terrible things happen to the people that are left behind there, but he's chasing her across the universe as well because he wants to capture her and have her as part of his harem. So she's got everything going on, and it's quite hilarious. And there are psychic cats on board as well.
Oh,
she had
really?
this, container of psychic cats that she was supposed to be delivering. But anytime anyone went in to feed or, look after the psychic cats, they'd just hypnotise them and say they're always escaping, and there are these psychic cats all over the ship. So it's a romp.
Something uplifting in the end.
It's a space romp.
Excellent. And if we want any of these fabulous books, where do we get them?
Wardini Books. We're online. We're at 16 Tomato Road in Havelock North and 44 Hastings Street in Napier.
As always, my pleasure. You look after yourself, Lou. Talk to the same time, same place next time.
Thanks, Ken.